Women who have the courage to come forward are routinely berated, mocked, and threatened. Joining me now to talk about this is Tarana Burke, founder and executive director of Me Too International, a friend and someone I admire a great deal. Tarana, thank you so much for being here. As you saw, we talked about Deshaun Watson last segment, but really this type of backlash against women accusers extend to many situations, from R. Kelly to Bill Cosby and even Deshaun Watson. Not equating these three situations, they're all different, but still, I would say, reprehensible. But why do you think so many women face this level of backlash? And I have to say, the most heartbreaking part is the backlash often come from people who look like you and me. That means black men, but it also means a lot of women as well.
I think people have a hard time understanding the breadth and depth of sexual violence in this country. And I think a lot of it is because we don't talk enough about what it is to be a survivor and what survival looks like, what it feels like. You know, oftentimes we understand sexual violence as it is presented to us on television and television shows. And if the victim, the person who comes forward, doesn't meet or a particular standard, then we dismiss it. We individualize survivors and sexual violence and what they experience. And if it doesn't fit what we see on Law and Order SVU, you know, if the person doesn't have meet a bunch of criteria that we set, then we dismiss it. And oftentimes we don't understand how difficult it is. When we look at this woman talking about 2.5 years of being harassed for coming forward about her personal trauma, people don't understand what that means. There is no reward in coming forward and talking about one of the worst things that ever happened to you. And yet we demonize these people for just wanting to have a voice.
Right. And it's very disheartening to see. You know, I have a lot of these conversations with men, and I think the disconnect, you know, there's always like, oh, well, they must have been after money or they wanted fame. And you know, Tarana, like that is not, this woman doesn't, this is not the kind of fame that she's not getting fame, she's getting infamy. She's not getting a new lifestyle, she's getting her life threatened. And so I just wonder for the men who see things like that and say things like that, what's your message to them?
I think that people have to understand that your life gets turned upside down. People will not remember this woman's name. Deshaun Watson's name will go on and live forever. He is a famous football player. We will remember him. We will talk about him. If you take a survey and ask people, and I do this all the time, if you ask people about the Me Too movement, they will instantly name the people who were accused. They will talk about Weinstein. They will talk about R. Kelly. They will talk about all the men who were the perpetrators. Ask them who are their accusers. Even the celebrities. People will have a hard time naming the people who came forward. Those people are not famous. We forget the survivors. We forget the people who come forward. There's no fame in it and there's no money in it. You know, beyond the 5-minute spotlight that you get when you come forward, these people's lives are forever turned upside down just trying to get some kind of accountability, some kind of semblance of their power back. And so people need to understand, take a look at it. Just look at the last 5 years. If people can name me 10, even 5 of the women or the men or any of the people who came forward and are the accusers, name me R. Kelly's accusers. Name me Weinstein or Bill Cosby's accusers. You don't know their names, but you know the people who are accused. And that gives you an idea of what we're talking about. There is no infamy in this. And so I think people need to look at the reality of it.
And look, you and I both know we can acknowledge the ugly racial history of accusations being made towards black men and, you know, what happens to them. We're not ignorant to that. Yet we still, you know, stand in solidarity as often as we can. And you mentioned the R. Kelly abuser. And I so often want to say to black men in particular, well, anybody sing a black girl song. You know, there were black women that were impacted by this. Do you not care? I want to honor that and take a listen to one of R. Kelly's accusers. And then I have a question for you after. Take a listen.
Does it feel like a victory at all? I mean, especially again,
honestly, it doesn't. Like him being in jail, it doesn't stop my life from moving forward. It's never going to stop me being attached to him or the documentary. It's never going to stop the backlash. If anything, it's kind of worsened since he's in jail. It's a whole bunch of angry fans, so it really hasn't gotten any better.
So these are some of the comments I've heard. R. Kelly got all that time just for that. Well, what about the parents? The parents should have, could have, they're at fault. Or these women seem to be willing participants in whatever was happening. And it really disgusts me. And I look and I wonder, what would support look like if they supported us as much as we support them? Even from this conversation, Tarana, you and I will be accused of talking bad about black men, of dragging black men, not supporting black men. And it's how can we get beyond that to at least understand each other and understand our respective pain and what's happening to some of these victims out there?
Listen, black women have the second highest rate of sexual violence in this country. Black women experience the second highest rate of sexual violence in this country. And that's at the hands of other black people. It's also at the hands of law enforcement. We need to look at the reality of what that is in this country. We need to change the conversation. This is not about vilifying black men. This is about understanding the trauma that black women are experiencing. The numbers don't lie. It is the reality. We need to have a real conversation about why this is happening and how we can change it. We don't have to vilify black men to do that. And actually, if we really believe that black lives matter, then we need to look at the lives and the livelihood of black women, because black women are at the heart of the black family. And if we really want to talk about how we're going to extend the lives of black people in this country, then we have to look at how we lift up the lives of black women. And that includes sexual violence. We have to look at how sexual violence is a social justice issue, right? And if we believe that and we really want to extend the lives of black people, then sexual violence is right at the heart of that. And we have to change the conversation. This is not about demonizing black men. All black men are not villains. And all black women, so that's not the conversation we need to have. We need to talk about why this violence is happening and how we can change that.
Yeah. And listen, there are many people out there who are accused, but I wanted to have this conversation because so many of my conversations around this subject are with black men about these particular black men and these black situations. But believe me, I've not forgotten about the Harvey Weinsteins of the world by any means. But I just wanted to talk about our community for a second. And the most disheartening of this is when women join that chorus. Get on the right side of history, sis, because it's not a pretty journey for the folks who deal with it.
And I'll say this too. Patriarchy affects everybody. So it's not just black men, it's black women too. Because a lot of times the first person we encounter is a woman when this happens to us. And those are messages that we get first. So all of us have to get right.